I said, overall, a good week, mainly for the fact that we did have a tremendous amount of opportunities. We were able to build inside those opportunities. And lastly, we were able to mitigate the risk, which was really great. Personally, I was a bit displeased with some of the trades that were sent, as I was wishing that they had pushed further than I had anticipated. But we got to always be mindful that price doesn't necessarily have to do anything. And so what's very important is we are committing to the plan that we are setting for ourselves before we are getting involved in the plays. As I always tell you guys, in the end of the day, if you guys have any questions, if you guys need any assistance when it comes to creating your plans, please don't hesitate to reach out. I am more than happy to help out, more than happy to tell you guys where my head is at, what I'm looking to do, so that provides some further clarity with regards to maybe what you guys are trying to do with each trade. And so to start off this past week started off extremely nice with the two crypto trades coming in. BTC USD ended up playing in our favor absolutely beautifully, and XRP USD. However, these trades ended up profiting and taking profit Tuesday and Wednesday. So we didn't really get to see, the positives of this till, coming into the midweek. But these trades did start to trend into profit, which was really great, which helped out, especially with that first trade that we decided to get into, which I'm going to get into in just a sec. But I just want to start with these trades, Legends, just because these were the trades that we did. The last two trades that I personally sent on Friday, that prior week, before this past week. And so as you guys can see, BTC USD did in fact make it to the final targeted area. I know a lot of legends were showing me a lot of their results with regards to this. And I just want to say once again, congratulations to those that did get involved in these plays. Just once again to go over real quick where my head was at with regards to these trades and what had taken place. We can see here that price did in fact get above a pretty significant region here around that 96.45 handle. Dropping down to the 4-hour time frame, you guys can see that we did in fact confirm and validate the entry as of right there. And from there, we did in fact see further continuation of that movement, which was absolutely awesome to see. Upon entry, we did in fact see that first push, which was great. And this entry here did in fact equate to take profit one being hit. From there, we did in fact see a very, very sharp pullback, which actually took place on that market open Sunday into Monday, which is perfectly okay. We have to always be mindful that we are in fact trading that impulse when we are switching out of a previous structure. And for a trend to continue, a trend starts in 4 points. You will always need that third point, that profit taking to take place to, in essence, validate and develop your trend. And so that's precisely what had happened. If you guys want to see that just in a little bit of a deeper stance, you guys can see that once we did get in fact above that previous region, we did in fact see that pullback. That pullback ultimately developed what is now the new higher low within structure, or that point that does in fact uphold all of that bullish momentum. And so we did in fact develop a trend, and that is the reason for why we did see a pullback in the way that we did. Ultimately, and as I tell my legends time and time again, you can't be afraid of drawdown. Drawdown is part of the game. More importantly, this game is a zero-sum game. And if you really look at it in a little bit more of a finer detail, for one movement to take place, the other side has to give, and vice versa. For an upward direction to take place and continue to being up, the downward, the bears, the sellers need to end up giving in for the opposite orders to take place, and vice versa. If a downward movement is going to continue to take place, you're going to need some type of bullish momentum involved to, in fact, warrant further continuation of that bearish momentum. And so, especially with a structure like this, that is precisely what had happened after that big surge there, because remember on the daily, that is just an impulse. We did in fact see some type of profit taking, relief, liquidation. You can call it a bull flag if you would like. Regardless, did see some development for further continuation, which we did in fact eventually see a nice run to the second and third take profit. And so this was a great trade all in all. Personally, I had gotten out right at between the 10.2 marker to 10.3. That just happened to be where price had taken me out. And I was just really pleased with these gains. Just under a 2-to-1 risk to reward ratio here, which was really great, sitting at a 1.88. And so that was a really great trade. Ripple, on the other hand, did end up getting to our final take profit and a little bit more, but did struggle in the beginning. Same thought process as before, right? We did in fact, and as you guys, I want you guys to really understand this. My trading, the way I'm sending the signals is the same every single time. The way I execute, the way that I approach is the same. It's just about understanding the characteristics of what we're getting involved in, which ultimately dictate the type of risk that is associated to that given structure or that trade. And so it's just about being aware of what you're getting involved in and what the potential counter arguments are. I can look at things in a very clear and clean perspective, mainly for the fact that, look, price simply moves in three ways. It moves up, it moves down, and it moves sideways. As long as you understand what dictates and warrants validation and invalidation, continuation and shifts of one side or the other, then it simply becomes a game of assessing the probability and the statistics and ultimately dictating if it's appropriate, if it's worth getting in based on what is being seen at the time. And so reason why I'm saying that is because as we saw in the BTC USD, and just showing you guys a little bit examples there, a trend will consist in 4 points. That is how a trend ultimately develops, with a series of highs and lows. As I said in the BTC USD signal before, once we broke out, this movement is just an impulse. There's always going to be expected that pullback to develop what will be your higher low for a potential higher high if a trend will establish. If you look at Ripple, exact same thing. Even though we were developing and even though we had a 4-point trend here, we look at the nature of this push here, this push that did in fact get rid of a previous part of the bearish momentum, was in fact an impulse. So that counter is always, if we do in fact pull back, that pullback is going to ultimately be in favor for the buyers to create another rally to the upside to potentially validate and establish a trend, unless we do in fact start to get below some previous regions that uphold all of that bullish momentum that would start to signify and indicate that the buyers are no longer in power, in control. And so what we can see is precisely what happened, which is the reason I'm going a little bit more of an explanation on this, is just because it is completely understandable on why price pulled back in the way that it did. This pullback is simply developing your higher low for a higher high, or simply creating what will be a trend if that breakout was valid. And so, apologies, legends, it should look something like this, right? Breaking that lower high over there. And so reason why I was okay with this was because BTC was looking pretty good, and I knew that if market could start kicking in, we would in fact see another run. Just to show you guys why I entered in the way that I did, that daily lower high over there was the main point of getting below. And so because of that, I felt really comfortable once we did break above here on the daily, and just showing you guys on the 2-hour time frame why I decided to pull the trigger in the way that I did. As you guys can see, we did have our successful confirmed entry there, in which I did enter exactly as shown, and stops were put below not only this point in structure in here, but also below this big wick, as this big wick is a pretty big indication that if we do get, it's an indication that orders are being grabbed for another push, but it's also an indication of if we get below that region, it doesn't mean we're switching momentum, but it just means that, hey, we're most likely going to pull down to a more significant region where buyers are going to have reason to get involved in the market before you expect a further leg, like I said, unless we break those previous sides that uphold all of that bullish momentum. And so price was unable to get below, thankfully, which in turn allowed for that further movement. And when that movement took place, it took out all the take profits in one shot. This was just under, I believe the max trade that we pushed was just under a 2-to-1 as well. I can just real quick confirm for you, legends, here the actual risk to reward just by looking at the structure here. And so yes, this was just under a 2-to-1 risk to reward ratio, which was really great. And so once again, legends, this is just a really great example to show you guys that drawdown is okay. It's about understanding what the drawdown is doing in reference to the structure that you're getting involved in, which in turn we did just in fact see a further continued movement, as all of this was simply a collection of orders for another run. One thing that I